Tulips are a springtime classic, and growing them in pots or raised beds lets you enjoy their beauty no matter how much space you have. I love growing tulips this way because it gives me control over soil quality, drainage, and placement. Whether you want a striking tulip display on your balcony, patio, or garden, I'll walk you through everything you need to know. The success of your tulips starts with choosing the right bulbs. I always look for large, firm bulbs without any signs of mold or softness. Bigger bulbs mean stronger, healthier blooms. If you want a continuous burst of color, mix early, mid-season, and late-blooming tulips. This way you can enjoy tulips for weeks instead of just a short bloom window. Classic varieties like Darwin hybrids are excellent for raised beds, while compact varieties like Grey G and Kaufmanniana are perfect for pots. Timing is everything. Tulip bulbs need to experience a cold period to bloom properly. I always plant mine in the fall, around 6 to 8 weeks before the first hard frost. This allows the bulbs to establish roots before winter sets in. If you live in a warm climate, you might need to pre-chill your bulbs in the fridge for 10 to 12 weeks before planting. Just keep them away from fruits like apples, which release ethylene gas and can ruin the bulbs. Pots are a fantastic way to grow tulips, especially if you want to bring them up close to enjoy their beauty. I always use a container that is at least 12 inches deep to give the roots plenty of room. Drainage is key, so I make sure there are holes at the bottom. I fill the pot with high-quality, well-draining potting mix and plant the bulbs with the pointed end up, about 6 inches deep. Crowding them a little closer than you would in the ground gives a fuller look, but I always leave a bit of space to prevent overcrowding. After planting, I water thoroughly to settle the soil. For an extra stunning display, I sometimes use the lasagna method by layering bulbs at different depths in the same pot. This way I get multiple waves of blooms, creating an extended tulip show in one container. Raised beds are another excellent option because they provide good drainage and easy access for maintenance. I start by loosening the soil and adding compost for a nutrient boost. Tulips do best in well-draining soil, so if you have heavy clay, mix in some sand or perlite. I plant bulbs about 6 inches deep and space them around 4 to 6 inches apart. If I'm aiming for a naturalized look, I scatter the bulbs randomly before planting instead of placing them in neat rows. Once they're planted, I water well to help them settle in for the winter. Tulip bulbs are hardy, but I always take a few precautions to make sure they come back strong. If I plant in pots, I move them to a sheltered spot against a wall or even bury the pots in the ground for extra insulation. I also cover the soil with a layer of mulch, like straw or shredded leaves, to protect the bulbs from harsh winter temperatures. If squirrels or other critters are a problem in your area, I suggest placing a wire mesh over the soil until the bulbs sprout in spring. A sprinkle of crushed red pepper flakes can also help keep them away. Once spring arrives, tulips wake up fast. I make sure to water them when the soil starts to dry out, but I never let them sit in waterlogged conditions. Overwatering is one of the fastest ways to rot bulbs. For fertilizing, I use a balanced, slow-release fertilizer when the first shoots appear. If I didn't add compost at planting time, I'll also give them a dose of liquid bulb fertilizer when they start to bloom. This keeps the flowers vibrant and the leaves healthy, which in turn feeds the bulb for next year's growth. The best part of growing tulips is enjoying their blooms for as long as possible. To extend their display, I stagger planting times in pots or mix different varieties in raised beds. Keeping them in a cool, partially shaded spot during peak bloom also helps slow down the fading process. When flowers start to fade, I deadhead them by snipping off the spent blooms. This stops them from putting energy into seed production and instead directs it back to the bulb for the next season. Once the flowers are gone, I resist the urge to cut down the leaves too soon. The foliage is still working hard to recharge the bulb for next year's blooms. I wait until the leaves turn yellow and wither naturally before removing them. If I'm growing tulips as annuals, which is often the case in pots, I dig up the bulbs and replace them with fresh ones in the fall. If I want to try and get a second-year bloom from my raised bed tulips, I leave them in the ground, but I make sure to plant them in well-draining soil and feed them after flowering. One challenge with tulips is that some varieties may not rebloom reliably. If I notice weak growth or small flowers, I assume the bulbs have depleted their energy and replace them. In pots, I always use fresh soil each year to prevent disease buildup. Pests like aphids can sometimes show up in spring, but I just rinse them off with a blast of water or use insecticidal soap if needed. Fungal issues like botrytis, tulip fire, can be prevented by ensuring good airflow and not watering from above. There's something magical about tulips appearing each spring after a long winter. Growing them in pots and raised beds makes them even more rewarding because I can control their environment and get creative with displays. If you've never grown tulips this way before, I encourage you to give it a try. They bring so much color and joy to small spaces, and with a little care, you can enjoy an incredible spring show year after year. If you found this guide helpful, don't forget to subscribe to Botanical Bliss for more urban gardening tips. Share this with fellow plant lovers so they can enjoy beautiful tulips too.